All right guys, welcome back to another phase for the GX460 build here on Lifestyle Overland channel. In this one, we're getting into the back end. This time we're going to be working on the storage system and my personal favorite category, the electrical system. So we've got lithium batteries, we've got the fridge, we've got the compressor, we've got lighting, we've got all of those pieces that need to be finalized and put into place. Now we've been running with the fridge with a couple bungee straps, no problem. We ran a dedicated line from the factory battery that's been keeping us going for, well, almost a year now. So it's time to expand our capabilities, formalize our storage system here in the rear. And the reason I mentioned electrical is it's going to be a part of this storage system. It's all going to be an inclusive unit. So what we're going to do is create a space within this storage system to contain our lithium batteries, to contain all of our red arc goodies. We've got a red arc battery management system going in. We've got the red vision system going in. And then we're also going to have a 1000 watt inverter along with the dual ARB air compressor. So it's a mouthful. We've got a lot of stuff to shoehorn into the back of this GX. So why don't we dig into a little bit of what we've been contemplating, and I'm going to let you ride along as we kind of think through this process and design the storage system, so maybe you can get some ideas for your own. Now, if you fall in that category of someone who's going to build your storage system yourself, I'm right there with you. I know that the brands that are out there, they make some incredibly high quality stuff, but man, it's expensive too. So we're going to dig into this with some 1/2-inch plywood for the most part, and then decide on a coating system at some point if we coat it at all. Right now we're just focused on functionality. It's kind of a bit of a first of its kind to have the electrical system built into it the way that we're going to go about it. So I want to get all that right before we spend a lot of time coating it. Now, if you're considering building your own storage system, there are a few key points that you're going to want to keep in mind. Number one, you want to really consider all of the gear that's going to be going inside of it. Lay it all out, get your dimensions, really think through how these components are going to work together. Do they need ventilation? How accessible do they need to be? What type of slides, what rating of slides are you going to need to, for example, take this fridge, slide it in and out 1,000 times and still take the abuse of the trail? So we want to think through all the different components and any requirements that might be attached to those in particular. The next piece is accessibility. Think about how you're going to be using your storage system. Now, I've already discussed this with Sarah at length, and we really want to take advantage of this barn door here on a GX. So we're going to be doing some fancy stuff with some flip down tables over on this side, and that dictates where the fridge is going to be mounted, because the fridge is going to be contained within its own box on a slide, so we won't be able to open it while it's in place. It's going to have to slide out. So when that happens, we don't want to have to flip up some fold down tables to do that. So you want to be thinking about how you're going to use that particular piece of storage gear. And then the next thing is going to be ventilation. Now, like I said, we're mixing our electrical system in with this storage system, so ventilation is going to be really key. Strangely enough, with lithium batteries, heat is also going to be necessary during cold weather, because that affects whether or not the lithium battery can actually charge. So we're going to be incorporating a couple of different ideas. Number one, we're going to have a lot of components within the same area so that they can share their heat signature, whatever's coming off of those as they're operating. And then we're also going to have a 12-volt old-fashioned RV water tank heat pad that's going to sit with the batteries as well. Now, I haven't tested this. I don't know how this is going to work, so you're going to find out right here. But we're thinking through all those processes. And then for the summertime, we're also considering putting a 12-volt fan into that system to vacate all of that excessive heat that's going to be coming off the electronics. So also want to consider any special needs that that equipment is going to require. Now, another piece of gear that sometimes people forget about is the fridge itself. That thing puts out a lot of heat. It's got to move a lot of air across that condenser to operate efficiently. So be mindful of how you have your fridge set up within the storage system. Is it getting enough air? Because you could be draining your battery a lot faster if your fridge isn't operating to its maximum efficiency. Now, the next point to consider is strength versus weight. We could build this out of steel. We could weld a steel cage in here, and we could do a lot of fancy things. And that's not a bad idea. Using some thin gauge steel as a skeleton can actually reduce weight rather than using heavy 3/4 inch particle board or plywood. So you want to think through your usage and then consider your number one, skills. What can you actually build yourself, or what it would cost to have someone else build that for you. Now, the 80/20 components out there that you see a lot of the fancy aluminum drawer systems built with, that's another option as well. We've talked to several people who really liked the results of their build using that material. But again, we get into some expense, we get into some availability issues, especially with the impacts that COVID has had on a lot of construction components. And then we also get into some weight. So consider your price point along with your structural weight that you're going to end up with, depending upon what you build your system out of. You're not going to want to be carrying around an extra 80 pounds just in your storage system if you can help it. So think about how you're going to construct that so that it can share each other's strength and maybe reduce your weight overall. Now, right now, we're tentatively planning to build this out of 1/2-inch Baltic birch. Baltic birch has been used for years in the marine industry and also in the cabinet industry. We know that it's strong. We know that it's lightweight. We've had a lot of good luck out of our storage system that's in the 4Runner, which is built out of the same stuff. So we're going with what we know in this instance, but don't be afraid to get out there and try some different materials as well. And then speaking of the weight concern, you also want to consider your weight balance. So obviously you wouldn't want to put all of your heavy gear just on one side of your storage system. If you do, and you travel by yourself a lot, you would put that probably on the passenger side to offset a little bit of how you have your vehicle loaded out. But you want to think through all these processes as you're designing your system, because the last thing you want to do is invest hundreds of hours into this and then find out your vehicle is now leaning to one side because you overloaded it. So think through the final weight balance of your vehicle as well. Now, we're going to have dual drawers over here on the right. So there's going to be a lot of tools that's going to go in the bottom drawer itself. Again, you want to keep your weight profile low, keep your center of gravity as low as possible. That's why the fridge is going to be on the bottom of the storage system. I know you see some that set up on top of the drawers. It makes it hard to get to. It raises your center of gravity. So think through those things as well. But at the end of the day, I think we got a pretty good plan on how we're going to balance out this system. And then the next thing that you want to consider is serviceability. So if you have components mounted in here, how easy are they to get to? Now, our game plan is the attic space, or the utility room as I like to call it, is going to be accessible while simply flipping down those rear seats. So we'll have full access to the entire electrical system, the air compressor, the inverter, all those bits and pieces are going to be easy to get to. So think through that as well. You don't want to box yourself off as you're building this around your components. And finally, modularity. So what I've decided to do with this system is, rather than building just a large cabinet that has to be installed in one piece, I'm going to break it down a bit. So we're going to have a base plate, we're going to have the fridge container, we're going to have the drawer container, and then we're probably going to have what I'm going to call the attic space that mounts on top. That way one person can actually manipulate this. So if you want to change your loadout, you can actually go in there, unscrew a couple of bolts, and pull out pieces in case you do need to go and pick up a large item. I mean, the possibilities are endless. This is still going to be used in your daily life more than likely. So having the ability to remove that storage system during the winter months or for a specific reason is actually going to be really, really handy. And you don't want to have a massive piece of furniture that you're pulling out of the back of the unit. So think about building it in a modular footprint. One other thing that you're going to need to think through is the type of slides that you're going to use. So you have the option of going with a locking slide or a non-locking slide, and the price difference is huge. Not to mention the weight ratings. You can get relatively inexpensive, cheaper, lower weight rating sliders, but they're going to suffer, especially when you pull that fridge out and it's loaded with 30 or 40 pounds of food. So consider your final weight for these components that are going to need to be sliding in and out, because that makes a huge difference. And also, I understand that most of us are probably going to camp on the most level surface possible, but sometimes you need to get into the rig either to get tools out, maybe you're making a sandwich alongside the trail. You're not always going to be level for that. So locking sliders, yeah, sometimes they're twice the price as the non-locking sliders, but boy, you'll be cussing yourself, honestly, if you don't have some type of locking mechanism on your drawers in your fridge, because it can get very, very frustrating. Not to mention the fact you can probably damage a finger pretty good too if you're not watching yourself. I'm not speaking from experience here at all. Anyhow, that about wraps up a quick little overview of building your own storage system. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to dive into this. I'm going to show you the program that I'm using to kind of plan this out, help me to visualize how all these components are going to work together, and make sure that we got enough space, number one. All right, so let's go jump on the computer now, and I'll kind of walk you through what we got so far. All right, welcome to the studio. Welcome to where all the editing takes place. Today, though, we're working on CAD files. But don't let that scare you off when I say CAD files. We're using probably one of the most basic programs you can possibly use. It's called SketchUp, and I've been playing with this thing since, I think it was Google who actually came out with it way back in the day. It's really evolved far beyond that. But I'm using the free trial right now just to kind of come in here and scratch together some ideas, check my dimensions, see if everything's going to work the way that I want it to. And then I've already confirmed with my cabinet maker, and this is something to remember, that he can convert this particular file type into his program for a CNC machine. So he can just drop that in, buzz everything out, and then I can take it somewhere and assemble it. So let me just dive in and show you kind of what we've got done so far. All right, so like I said, this is called SketchUp. Now the beauty of this program is it's really, really easy to use, and that's kind of why I gravitate towards it while I'm just trying to come up with some ideas. Let me just show you real quick how simple it can be. We can come over here and grab just a rectangle tool like so, and then grab the push-pull tool, and boom, we just created a box. So it's almost as if you're sculpting, not so much sketching. So we can come in here and create another void by simply drawing our square, grabbing our push-pull tool again, and then pushing that in. So you can see how quickly you can just throw together all kinds of different ideas for storage systems. So it's really, really simple. I'm just going to grab this and delete it. And so what you see here took me about 30 minutes to draw up. So over on the left, in this section here, this is going to be for the fridge. And what I've done is I've allowed for the depth of the fridge, including the handles, the width of the fridge, including all the hardware, and then I added about 1/4 inch of clearance in both directions, just so we're not dragging on the sides while we're trying to move the fridge in and out. Now I also checked on our hinges that we've got ordered, and I've confirmed the dimensions, but just keep in mind you have to add to the height as well. So we'll have a small wooden platform that mounts to these slides in this area here, so we can kind of visualize what that's going to look like by adding a line here, and again just grabbing our tool again to pull this out about 3/4 of an inch, and that's going to be the width of our slides, something like this. So again, we can come in here and throw all these dimensions into place. Now over here on this side, you just see a big void that's actually going to have 2 drawers in place, and I left it open like this just to make it easy for my cabinet guy to kind of see what our intentions were. He's pretty skilled at popping out drawers, so I'm not too worried about giving him all the dimensions for this particular instance right here. We're just going to split the difference, so it'll be 2 drawers, roughly about 11.5 inches a piece, so that they can overlap the bottom and overlap to the top. And then we'll also come out here to the side. So now I mentioned earlier that we were going to have a little cubby hole here for all of our utilities. So you see I've shortened the drawers up. They're only going to be 24 inches deep, and that allows me to have an extra 8 inches within this cavity along with whatever's left over behind the seat itself. So what I've done is I've actually duplicated this over here. See, I can start to get an idea of what parameters I'm working with. So this plane here is basically showing me where the back of my seat is going to lie. Now the beauty of the GX is this seat is adjustable. So worst case scenario, it's only going to have Caroline in the back, so we don't need a lot of leg room. So we can actually slide this forward if need be. But I want to build this so that it's ready for anyone down the road. Now, I'm not going to dig too deep into this right now. I'm still working through a lot of this myself. What I've done is I've gone back up into the garage and I've gotten all my measurements for all the different parts and pieces that we're going to be putting into the storage system so that I can start laying it behind this imaginary seat back and see if everything's going to fit. Make sure I don't run into any huge snags before I send this off to the cabinet maker. So I'm going to keep tinkering on this. I'll probably run a little bit of a time lapse so you can kind of see how I fiddle with things and get them laid into place. But yeah, I just thought that would be a good tip for you guys as you're scratching your head on your own system. So I'm going to get after this. All right, well, I've been tweaking on this for probably the last couple of days, just off and on. I would say I've probably got about 2 hours, 3 hours in the whole thing, and a lot of that was just trying to revisit how to use the actual program, but I think we've got a good plan here. Let me show you what we're working with. So what I've done is I've broken it down into every modular component with the exception of the main storage, and I'll show you here in just a second. But this is to make it just easier on my cabinet guy. So here's the base plate, very basic dimensions, very basic construction. And then we have the main storage here with all the dimensions and stuff laid out for my cabinet guy. And again, this unit is 2 separate pieces. It's split right here in the middle. And then from there, we have this little attic space that we were talking about, and I'll show you how this works here in just a second, but this is gonna sit right up on top. Now, the beauty of this is you can run with the base plate, or you can run with the fridge, or you can run with the drawers. So you can customize this based on your storage needs at the time. Now, let me show you the final product. Here's the concept that we're working with, and I've gotten fancy, maybe a little bit too involved, but anyhow, let me show you what we're working with. So we'll hide this. Matter of fact, let me just move it out of the way. But first, you can kind of see how everything's tucked in nice and tight here behind the seat back. Pull that aside. And inside here, we have the Manager 30. The Red Vision control panel. We've got our compressor, which is going to mount up top in this little cubby, next to the 1 gallon auxiliary tank. So it's the extra little air tank that comes in the kit. We've got a 1000 watt inverter hiding back here in the back, and then our 100 amp hour Dakota lithium battery sitting out here in the tray. And it all fit in there nice and tight, nice and neat. I think that's going to work. The big heat output from this is going to be our Manager 30 right here, and I think there's going to be lots of ventilation for where he's going to sit, especially when we add in our 12 volt fan somewhere in that area. So there's that portion of it. Spin around here to the back, and you can see how that attic space sits on top. And this is the primary goal for this left-hand side space is going to be for our Camp Chef Mountaineer. So that fits in there along with the leg set right next to it. This is just going to be extra miscellaneous storage. Probably going to do Sarah's kitchen in this upper drawer here. And then a tool set will be in the lower drawer. Again, we want to keep our center of gravity as low as possible. And then this is the low profile. I believe this is the CL60. I think it's a 60-liter fridge by Snowmaster. And underneath it, I haven't drawn this in yet, but we have space to have another shelf that slides out from underneath this. So that's going to be really handy when you're on the side of the road. You want to slide this out and have a space to make a sandwich. You can just pop out about 30 inches of a cutting board / shelf there underneath it. So yeah, very simple design, but I think it's going to do the trick for us. I think that's going to work. And starting to lean towards carpeting this, believe it or not. I think we're going to carpet the main structure, and then we're going to do some nice drawer faces here, talking about maybe doing some walnut. And then if you remember earlier in the video, we actually talked about having some flip down tables there, and the barn door of the GX. I think we'll do those in walnut too. Just, you know, it's a GX. It's the whole pinkies up persona. Let's just go ahead and make it look fancy. Anyhow, that is the plan. Now I've sent this to my cabinet guy. I'm just waiting for him to give me a little bit of feedback. But for now, shoot, yeah, I think that'll work. Now, one thing that I want to mention really quickly, in case it isn't just straight up obvious, but you don't have to run these same components. If you were to build something similar to this, you don't have to run exactly what we have here. So if you're someone who already has a battery pack that you're running your fridge off of, this void's going to give you a nice little spot to slide that into place, put a bungee strap across it, and route your power into the fridge section there. So it's going to be really versatile for a lot of different setups. All right, so that's going to kind of wrap up our first look at the storage system that we're working through. We're going to do a series of videos on the GX here. This is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. We're hoping to kind of give you guys some insight into how we work through all these different solutions for our rig, and I hope you found this helpful. Maybe it's helped you think about some ideas for your own storage system. And again, we are having a cabinet guy build this for us, but this is totally doable in your garage with some basic tools. We're just going to go in here. We want to use some Baltic birch so we can get super strong, super lightweight materials. And we want them to be able to dovetail some of the drawers and stuff so that they last a really long time. But again, you can do this in your own garage. So check out SketchUp, scratch around on it, come up with some ideas, get you some plywood and get out in the garage. And before you know it, you can have that rig nice and organized. So, all right. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you on the next one. Stay curious.